All right, this is my presentation on emotional behavioral disorders. So the IDEA defines an emotional behavioral disorder as a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time and to a marked degree that adversely affects a child's educational performance. And then the characteristics are an inability to learn that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors, an inability to build or maintain interpersonal relationships with peers and teachers, inappropriate types of behaviors or feelings under normal circumstances, a general pervasive mood or unhappiness or depression, a tendency to develop physical symptoms or fears associated with the personal or school problems. So an emotional behavioral disorder kind of covers a lot of disorders that we know. It's kind of a really broad umbrella. Some of the most common ones can be anxiety, depression, ADHD, emotional withdrawal, aggression, immaturity, learning difficulties, mood swings, abnormal motor acts, eating disorders, and more. For prevalence, about 1 in 5 children in the US have been diagnosed with some sort of EBD. Again, the most common ones are anxiety, ADHD, and then behavioral / conduct disorder. In Minnesota, 11% of our students have been diagnosed with an emotional or behavioral disorder, and then of that 11%, 52% of those were African American, which is kind of an interesting statistic. Tied into this, as of 2023, 40% of high schoolers had reported feelings of sadness or hopelessness in the past year. That's a really high amount. That's almost half of high schoolers. And obviously this is after COVID, and as we all know, COVID kind of had a spike in mental health problems, and so we could be seeing an increase in diagnosed EBD. Because there is such a broad blanket that EBD covers, the causes are, there's a bug in here. The causes are kind of all over the place, but there are some common links. So a high ACE score, which is adverse childhood experiences, which means pretty much anything hard that you went through as a kid adds to your score and then makes you more likely for things later on in life, negative things later on in life. And so having a high ACE score, abuse, genetics, hormone imbalances, inconsistent expectations or discipline, parenting styles, substance abuse, or just general trauma. For long-term effects, these can vary greatly, just dependent on the diagnosis again, but some common themes would be academic struggles, anxiety and depression if someone was not already struggling with that, substance abuse, maintaining work and maintaining relationships, possible criminal behavior, and then poor physical health just related to the overall lifestyle. But again, these are fluctuating because obviously someone with a behavioral disorder is going to be different than someone with an eating disorder. So it just kind of depends on where they're at. For physical education, though, specifically, some adaptations that can be made for these students, again, kind of just a blanket statement, pick and choose what works for your specific student. These are kind of under the area of more of the behavioral than like any of the mental conditions, but they might work, so blanket statement. But for environmental, having clear routine and structure can help reduce anxiety in students. Having positive behavior supports, focusing more on what they're doing right than what they're doing wrong. Having clear expectations and sticking to them is really important. And then having a take a break space, because these students can often get pretty riled up by conflict or getting out or when things don't go their way. So having a space for them to just step to the side, catch their breath, take a break can be really beneficial and important. For social and emotional, having them work in small groups, buddies, or independent based on their needs and their wants. Sometimes having them work independently could be better, or having them work in a group could be better. So it just depends. The nice thing about PE is it already integrates a lot of social skills, and those are really beneficial for these students, especially learning these at a younger age, learning how to communicate, take turns, conflict resolution, which is huge. So that's really nice. Instructional adaptations would be having really short, clear instructions, adding visual supports, task breakdowns, and then choice-based activities if possible. And then for the activities themselves, adaptations would be making the games less competitive, which for some students isn't ideal, but if you have these students in your class, it's definitely going to benefit them because, again, getting out or tagged or conflict with rules, anything like that could be a set-off for these students and can create a situation or put them in, a mood that you don't want them in. And so making the games less competitive, modifying the rules for them, maybe it's a tag game and they have to get tagged 3 times before they're out instead of once, just so that they can participate for longer, and again, avoiding any set-offs in your class. Alternative participation, maybe having them lead an activity or something like that. And then shortened duration, if they're one of those students that just can't be in the PE environment for very long, having them in there but for a shorter amount of time. Recommended physical activity for someone with EBD would be any physical activity, because, as we all know, physical activity is really good for our brains. It can help calm our mood, release any physical or emotional tension, and then it releases endorphins, which help us feel better. So for someone with EBD, that release of endorphins should definitely be encouraged. So any physical activity is good, but specifically yoga or a mindfulness activity could be really good for these students. Individual sports, again, just having them active but avoiding conflict. So individual basketball, bowling, running, walking, jump rope, weightlifting, anything like that. And then I also saw that, for the younger students, these kind of sensory activities like tactical play or beanbags or stepping stones can be beneficial for them as well. For 3 specific sport activity adaptations, I did no dribble or 3 dribble basketball. So you either can't dribble or you can only dribble 3 times before you have to pass it, stop and pass it. 5 students have to touch the ball, or you can do all students have to touch the ball before anyone can shoot. And then having the team earn points based on teamwork as well as encouragement. And this helps slow down the game and then gets everyone included if you're doing the how many people have to touch the ball before you can shoot. It just gives your student a chance to make sure they're participating and they're feeling good in the environment. They're able to participate and their peers are encouraging them and participating with them. So then for soccer, I did pass and score soccer. So there'd be no goalies, no defense. And then it just kind of focuses on teamwork and cooperation. So you're just passing to each other, shooting, then this team's going this way, passing, shooting. And it focuses more on the positive aspects of just getting goals and getting better, opposed to having to worry about getting the ball stolen, not getting the goal against the goalie, things like that. And then my last activity adaptation would be stations, but having self-paced stations so they can stay there as long as they want, or they can go and come back whenever they want. And then there's no need for transitions, if sometimes transitions can be hard for these students. So just having them be able to kind of be where they want, doing what they want in the gym. Activities to avoid, I kind of already touched on this, but highly competitive team sports might not be the best idea for these students. It could just create too much conflict, put them in a negative mood, have outbursts, something like that. Elimination games, so dodgeball when there's no way for them to get back in before the round resets, musical chairs for the younger students, tag games, again with no way to get back in until the round resets. Unstructured free play, too complex of rules, and then overstimulating or really fast-paced games also might not be best for these students. Aids and devices, again, these are going to kind of be for more behavioral students more than someone who just has, depression or an eating disorder or something like that. But this, again, kind of just blanket aids and devices. So having weighted vests, noise-canceling headphones, visual timers, social stories to kind of say, this is what's going to happen, this is what's expected of you, be ready for this. Stress putty, that could be in your take a break corner to help them calm down. Using soft balls, behavioral tracking, showing when they're doing good, not focusing so much on when they're doing not as good. And then using first then boards. So first we're going to do warm-ups, then we're going to do our relay race, just so they know what to expect, know where we're at in the class. So for my potential IEP goals for a student with EBD, I did a 6th grader who has more of the behavioral conduct disorder. And so I did student will use a self-regulation strategy like deep breaths, take a breath, or coping skills when they feel frustrated or overwhelmed during PE, with adult prompts decreasing from 3 to 0 over 9 weeks. Student will accept correction or redirection, like stopping a behavior or following a rule, without physical or verbal aggression in 4 out of the 5 opportunities. And then students will demonstrate appropriate social interaction, taking turns, sharing equipment, giving positive feedback with peers during group games in PE in 80% of observed sessions. And those are my references.